and welcome to the first episode of the Back of a Length podcast. You're here with myself, Mark.
And you're here with Renee, and we're so excited to bring you this podcast.
Absolutely. We thought we'd start with a little introduction for our listeners, basically introducing myself. My name is Mark. I've been following cricket since I was 12, originally from the UK. I played for Mughal Cricket Club for many years with varying levels of success. I hold the record at my club for the longest over bowled in club history.
Do you?
Yeah, I thought I'd leave that as a bit of a surprise for you. Yeah, 18 ball over, which I'm sure any lads listening in will be delighted to hear all about.
18
yeah, so they were playing leg side wides and I just could not keep it on the offside. Bloody awful. So I'm better talking and watching about cricket than I am actually playing it. Support England and the Blackcaps, and that is about it from myself really as regards to an introduction.
And I'm Renee, and I'm a huge Blackcaps fan. I got into cricket about a decade or so ago when I was 18 and I saw Tim Southee for the first time.
Do tell us
and
more.
I thought, well, that's about the whole story. So I thought, that is a nice looking bloke. And I started watching it. My parents would watch it. I would watch it as well. From there, just learnt the game, learnt how it worked, realised these guys are pretty cool. Since then, have travelled the world watching cricket and supporting our Blackcaps.
Excellent. So that's just a little bit about ourselves. I'm sure a lot of our listeners will resonate with, either playing or how we came to follow our respective teams and just follow cricket in general, because it is a bit of a niche sport to talk about. So we're going to do our best to make this as entertaining as possible, because a lot of people think it's the most boring sport in the world.
We are here to surprise you. Cricket can be so exciting. I've been on the edge of my seat at so many games.
So have I, but that's mainly to do with having too much alcohol. But we'll go into that throughout the whole series.
That is true. This podcast was dreamed up at the Boxing Day test last year after a few ciders and beers, and Mark and I thought, you know what, we've got a lot to say. And we want you guys to hear it too. We were sitting there with a friend who knew nothing about cricket, and we thought, can we convince someone like her to come to more tests? Absolutely.
Shout out to that lovely friend, Stephanie Borkowski. Hi, Steph. You're on Spotify. Woo! She, as you will have, you won't know that she made the logo, but I'm just about to tell you that she made the logo for the podcast.
She did.
So the beautiful logo that you see every time that you come onto our page, that was designed, created by Steph, and we are indebted to her for that logo. I think the audience that I kind of want to reach is maybe something similar, somebody who doesn't necessarily follow cricket, but after listening to this podcast wants to understand more about cricket, maybe would go to a 2020 game. If they do go to a 2020 game in Auckland on the back of our podcast, let us know. We'd love to meet up with you, have a couple of drinks, tell you more about cricket, and just hopefully get you as excited as we get about cricket.
Absolutely. It's going to be a huge summer ahead of us.
Absolutely.
The Blackcaps just wrapped up the T20 World Cup campaign. We'll touch on that in a little bit in this episode. They head to India next to take on the home side in some T20s and 2 test matches. And then they are finally coming home. They play Bangladesh, South Africa, the Netherlands and Australia on our home summer tours. I'm so excited. And the other great thing about the New Zealand summer is the Super Smash that kicks off in late November, and I can't wait.
Absolutely. We'll have all of that covered for you, and we'll also cover on what's going on over the ditch. Big summer of cricket for Australia. They've got the Big Bash, which starts on the 5th of December. Then just the small little series called the Ashes, which starts on the 8th of December. Probably not going to pay too much attention to that, obviously. And then at the end of January, the Blackcaps tour of Australia as well for a few ODIs and a couple of 2020s, I think. So yeah, plenty of content to keep you going all summer.
Something for everyone.
We're really excited.
And of course, how can we forget about our women? They will be here early next year before the ICC Women's World Cup is on our shores. Our girls will be on show. This will be a huge, huge competition.
And it's going to be fantastic when England win that trophy.
Oh, you said that. You've said that so many times. I don't see it coming. The White Ferns are so good at the moment. Of course, Australian women also at the top of their game. Anything could happen in that series. We'll bring that to you early next year. T20 World Cup wrapped up yesterday, but it started with such a bang. There were qualifiers with Sri Lanka, Namibia, Ireland, Netherlands, Scotland, Bangladesh, Oman and Papua New Guinea playing off. 4 of those teams would go through to the Super 12. The Super 12 was then split into 2 groups with the top 2 teams going into the semi-finals. Let's take a look at those group stages. We're going to start with Namibia, who I thought it is so nice to have you in this tournament.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They are a team that is going to continue to grow, hopefully with the support of South Africa. Obviously, their neighbouring country, they pulled out some pretty cool performances. Didn't come away with any huge wins, but really a team that is going to keep growing in the next 10 years.
Yeah, I think the fact that they just got a win over Scotland in the group stage proper was it was a massive fillip for them. As you say, they have got a couple of South Africans in there, and I think David Wiese probably is the name that stands out the most. He helped them with bat and ball, but yeah, just basically what you said, it was just nice to see a team like Namibia make the proper, in inverted commas, T20 World Cup, and hopefully that will give them the opportunities to go from strength to strength in years moving forward.
Absolutely, and along with Namibia, we had Scotland qualify as well. They put out such a solid performance.
They did, yeah. Scotland, again, another team that was just really good to see there. Probably, again, aren't expecting too much from them, same as Namibia. It's just nice to have those nations there. They had, a couple of players, couple of standout players. Richie Barrington, Carl Kurtzer. Carl Kurtzer's been around for years. Carl Kurtzer's probably household name, especially in the UK, because he's been around the county circuit for quite a while.
Absolutely.
I think this gives them an opportunity going forward to maybe have some international teams tour Scotland.
Absolutely.
When they tour England. Similar for Ireland as well. Should they tour Scotland as a bit of a warm-up game to give Scotland that exposure to better international calibre of players?
Absolutely, what I agree with. Scotland, Ireland and even the Netherlands should be having these international sides come over, even if it's just for like one ODI or one T20 series. They need that exposure, and this will grow the game of cricket. I also thought Sri Lanka had a really good tournament. They're a really young, inexperienced team. They're not the team that has won previous World Cups. But they did beat the West Indies, they beat the Bangladesh, and Hasaranga was the top wicket taker in the World Cup overall, mostly thanks to a hat-trick against South Africa.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity for the younger players to have a bit of tournament exposure, I guess, through the T20 World Cup. You touched on the fact that they are inexperienced. This will only serve Sri Lankan cricket well going forward.
Absolutely.
They've had a decent couple of years. They had a couple of wins. They had a win, I think, against Australia in Sri Lankan conditions.
I think South Africa as well.
So yeah, they've definitely got a lot going for them. It's just they're going through a rebuild phase at the moment with the. When you lose a team that's got Jayawardene, Sangakkara, Muralitharan, Chaminda Vasin, then obviously you're going to miss those greatly. But hopefully this exposure will give them the opportunity to kick on and go back to the heights that they previously had as a previous T20 World Cup winner.
Definitely. Let's talk about Afghanistan. Well, I love talking about Rashid Khan. He is one of the best T20 players of our generation. He has 400 wickets in competitive T20s, the 4th player in history to ever do this. But are Afghanistan a one-man band?
I don't think they are a one-man band. I think Rashid Khan rightly gets all of the plaudits, and a lot is placed on his shoulders due to the statistics that you just talked about, but they still have other good players. Mohammed Nabi, he is a renowned T20 specialist around the world. He is 36 years old, so he's probably not a long-term future prospect. Well, he definitely isn't a long-term future prospect for Afghanistani cricket. But you've also got Majib. He's 20 years old, and he again is winning plaudits for his performances in T20 franchise cricket around the world. So with those players, Afghanistani players or especially the youngsters, are going to look up to those players and want to emulate. So they've definitely got a good platform to be able to grow going forward. And as we say, with the likes of Namibia, Scotland and Sri Lanka, just having this tournament exposure will only serve Afghanistani cricket well.
I would have loved to see Afghanistan take a win over some of the higher teams in Group B, like Pakistan or India. Of course, I'm not going to say I hope
New Zealand.
No, I'm not going to say I hope they beat New Zealand. They wouldn't have made the playoffs if that was the case. Potentially over India would have been a big upset. Not to be this tournament, but can't wait to see them again in the future.
Moving on to a couple of teams that we feel had disappointing tournaments, given their relative stature in the game. Bangladesh, first of all, for me, majorly disappointing, very underwhelming.
Very disappointing.
I don't think they had the greatest of warm-ups for the T20 World Cup. They had two 2020 series against New Zealand and Australia, both of which were at home, but the pitches that they prepared were vastly different to those that they would have played on in the UAE. And I just don't think it gave them the best opportunities to succeed in the UAE.
No, I think they'll walk away with this with a lot to learn and a lot to look back on and think, oh, where did it go wrong? Along the same lines, a very disappointing tournament from the West Indies.
Yes.
This is a team that has twice won this tournament. They did not have that West Indies fireworks that we're used to.
Yeah, it's very disappointing way for Dwayne Bravo and Chris Gayle to retire from international cricket. Dwayne Bravo has said he's retiring, and Chris Gayle, not 100% certain. You never know with the universe boss. He will probably retire until the World Cup next year, and then we'll come back and we'll smash 100 off his first 30 balls, because that is Chris Gayle to a T. But yeah, couldn't agree more. Disappointing tournament for a team of the stature of the West Indies. They've got powerhouses all the way through, and they just did not deliver on this occasion.
Let's talk about South Africa. They had a little bit of tough luck in this series. They finished third in their group and they lost their semi-final place due to net run rate. South Africa, England and Australia all winning 4 games, but South Africa coming down in third place. They had a tough start. They lost to Australia by a lot, and they sort of had to play catch up from there. Yeah,
that first game really put them on the back foot. They also had the off-the-field controversies with Quinton de Kock that would have taken away they would have made a bit of a distraction from them, but they did finish really strongly. They obviously beat England in their last game, which, it was a really good performance by them. Rassie van der Dussen finished on 96 not out. They didn't just beat England, they battered them.
They sure did. I'm sure you're still hurting from that. Look, South Africa have had so many star players retire in the past 5 years. Steyn, de Villiers, Morkel, a huge list. They've spent sort of the past 4 years rebuilding this team, and I think they're in such a strong position now. Like you said, van der Dussen, really strong for the team. Rabada becoming a household name. They are back on New Zealand shores next year for the first time in 4 years, and I am so excited.
Last time I saw South Africa on New Zealand shores was the 2015 World Cup semi-final at Eden Park, which was probably the best game I've ever been to as well. So
was a good one.
I'm also very excited to see South Africa back here. They've got a pretty stacked team. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what they can do in conditions that should suit their bowlers pretty well. It should be a very evenly matched up series.
Absolutely. Well, you just mentioned a stacked team. Was there a more stacked team in this tournament than India? Kohli, Panch, Deja, Rahul, Sharma, Pancha, Bumrah. I could go on and on about India, and they didn't make the semi-finals.
That was the biggest shock of the tournament. They went into what was perceived to be a somewhat home tournament as favourites. So England, I think, were second favourites, but India went in as clear favourites, and they just failed to deliver. I don't know if any of the news of Virat Kohli stepping down as captain after this series would have had any distractions, but do you think maybe that they were just cricketed out? You look over the last...
They have played, so much cricket in the past few months. They were in England. All these players have been in the IPL. They've played so much cricket, which we would have thought would have been a good thing, but was it too much?
You wonder with the big issue at the moment with the bubbles, the T20 tournament. The IPL
COVID
started in April and that finished in the middle of May. They came over to England in the middle of June, back into a bubble again. They played a 5-test series there, 4-test series before they cried off in the last one because they were winning 2-1. And then
I think they also lost the World Cup test.
I forgot about that one. How could I forget about that one?
How
could you forget? I don't know if I should delete that out because our listeners are going to think, who's this weirdo? They did. They lost the one-off Test Series championship against New Zealand, and it's just a lot of cricket to then return straight to the IPL, to finish the IPL and go straight into a 2020 World Cup. It's got to play a bit of mental and physical fatigue as well, because the IPL is obviously played in conditions that are really, really hot. Indians are obviously used to it, but it's still got to have some physical as well as mental fatigue, I think.
I think these bubble fatigues have got to be looked at for teams. They're not going to go away, at least for another 6 months, you would think. So how much longer can teams keep doing this? Is this an excuse enough for India, though, or should they have played better?
I definitely think they should have played better, and they will 100% use it as an excuse. Indian cricket in the past generally hasn't liked to accept responsibility. They would generally put responsibility elsewhere if they can to deflect. Indian fans are so passionate. I don't blame them for trying to deflect.
So passionate. And we love them. We do love them.
We do. And welcome along to any Indian fans that we do have listening. We fully sympathise with your team's performance through the World Cup. We would have loved to see them go further, but unfortunately it wasn't to be.
Let's talk about the semi-finals now, starting with Pakistan. They were so dominant in this series. To me, they were the favourites to win. I know I love the Blackcaps, but Pakistan had everything on paper. I cannot believe they lost to Australia in their semi-final. They were beaten by a huge hit from Marcus Stoinis. He went basically crazy like he does. They were on home turf. They should have won. What went wrong?
I actually can't put a finger on it. The only thing that I can say went wrong was that they dropped the catch at the most important stage, I think, of the game and possibly of the tournament for them. Matthew Wade hit it up in the air. It was a relatively simple catch for an international standard fielder running round. Should have been able to take it. He shelled it. They got 2 runs and then head went down. Matthew Wade there finished it with 3 sixes at the end. I think Matthew Wade scored something silly like 34 off his last 8 balls to win it for Australia.
Yeah, such a surprise that Pakistan lost that game. They've got some huge players, of course. To touch on Shaheen Shah Afridi, who is probably going to be the player of the next generation. He is so good. And I know, are we going to turn into every other podcast out there that has on about this guy?
Yeah, absolutely.
But he is so good.
He is. He's got a bit of everything. He's got pace. He's pretty tall, delivers it from a good tall position, so he's got to have a lot of bounce. He's also got swing. That in swing, I don't care how good you are as a right-handed batsman, if you can get it to swing from outside off stump to hit middle, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to trouble everybody, especially with the ones that go straight across as well, because you're going to create that doubt in the batsman's mind. Batsmen are going to feel for it, expecting it to swing in. You're going to take the outside edge. And vice versa. If the batsmen aren't expecting it to swing, you're obviously going to take the pads. He's phenomenal. Babar Azam, captain.
Oh, phenomenal.
I don't know how much we really want to cover about him because he is just a phenomenal player. Everyone knows he's a phenomenal player. Surprisingly, he wasn't coveted in sort of the big four of Kane Williamson, Joe Root, Steve Smith, and Virat Kohli. But Babar Azam in his own right is probably the most formed player out of those 4 at the moment, or out of those 5,
Absolutely.
at the moment.
Well, Pakistan could come back in 2022 when this tournament is replayed, but you might have a different opinion on who favourites for 2022 is.
You say might. I definitely do have a different opinion on who the favourites are for 2022. I am going to say England will be the favourites for 2022.
Really?
I don't know if that's going to come as a shock to too many people. The tournament for us started off...
For us? Like you're one of the players?
Tournament for me and the lads was absolutely fantastic. Now, the tournament for England, it started off really well. We dismantled the West Indies and you looked at it and thought, is that a really good performance from England? Are they real favourites? Are they on their game? Are the West Indies undercooked? And it was probably a bit of both. But then taking apart Australia in the way that we did really made me realise that we could do something special in this tournament. Unfortunately, we lost Tamar Mills and we lost Jason Roy, which for us they're two integral players, especially Jason Roy. At the top of the order, I think you saw it in the semi-final against New Zealand. Johnny Bairstow, when he came in, if he's not sure, he's going to play a little bit safe. Jason Roy will just try and smash you all the way back to England, no matter where he plays in the world.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter where the ball pitches, he gets you on the front foot and he puts the bowlers and the fielders on the back foot. Speaking
Definitely
of being able to
felt like
hit the
their
ball
momentum stalled.
all the way back to England, Liam Livingstone. Shout out to Liam Livingstone, hit the biggest six of the tournament.
Liam Livingstone. Well, you mentioned to me the other day, Mark, when we were talking about this game, you said Liam Livingstone has spent the past 12 months perfecting his technique with the ball, with a bat and with a bottle of bleach. He is a player to watch.
He really is. He can hit the ball a long way, and he's showed through this tournament as well. He can bowl a bit, he can bowl off spin, he can bowl leg spin, and he can bat. So a genuine all-rounder. I would class him as a genuine all-rounder, and I'm looking forward to seeing what he can produce for England going forward. And Australian pitches should suit him as well, as he showed in the Big Bash. Good bounce, favourable bounce, consistent bounce, good pace. He will hit the ball from Brisbane to Auckland. That leaves us with the two finalists. Australia, honestly, no idea how they made it to the final. That performance against South Africa was somewhat under par. They got smoked by England, yet they just produced big performances when they needed it. And I think, again, you talk about stacked teams. Australia have a stacked team. They've got match winners riddled throughout. So I think that's how they got there. Obviously, Matthew Wade there in the semi-final got them through with Marcus Stoinis, and the final they had Mitchell Marsh, who was just phenomenal. Not really too much I can say about Australia. They did well. Congrats to Australia for winning. They probably deserved to win it, I guess, on the balance overall.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. I think Mitch Marsh had the innings of his life. He is incredibly talented. He was due a big game, but I would say he has what I'm going to call cricket luck. He was finding those gaps that were going just wide of a fieldsman, that were going to the boundary, a couple of lucky boundaries there. He kept that run rate under control. He was just due a huge game. Of course, you also had the likes of Pat Cummins and Adam Zampa having an incredible game. It's in my DNA to not really like Australians, but it has been a joy to watch the likes of Cummins and Zampa dominate the last 5 years of Australian cricket. They are a formidable pair.
Yeah, as an Englishman, again, ingrained in the DNA to not like Australian cricket. But I do enjoy.
Well, they have a bit of a history.
Yeah, I do enjoy watching.
Not the best.
I do enjoy watching Pat Cummins. I think he is one of the few Australian players that seems to be a little bit grounded. He just seems to be a genuinely nice guy, and he's just a really good bowler. He's definitely in the top 3 Test bowlers in the world, and he comes in and just pounds away all day. Always has a smile on his face, which is really good to see. Moving on to New Zealand, Renee, this is your category to take away.
I sure will. I love it talking about the Blackcaps, obviously. A great series. This was a team that probably on paper shouldn't have made it this far. They haven't played together in this team since February. 2 series against Bangladesh, home and away, but a different first 11 playing
absolutely.
there. I really enjoyed seeing Daryl Mitchell opening the batting. That was a surprise. I would have thought maybe Conway would go up there. Daryl Mitchell coming in and really playing the anchor role along with Martin Guptill. The New Zealand team, they needed control and they need big hitters at the top, and that is what Guptill and Mitchell did. Also phenomenal to see Guptill still on form as always. Few doubts over whether or not he has had, the best form of his life lately. I think also brilliant to see Adam Milne back in the team, coming in for an injured Lockie Ferguson. Unfortunately, Lockie Ferguson going out at the start of the tournament. But Adam Milne, an absolute comeback. He is going to be so good. He bowls fast, he bowls with pace. He is so good.
And he's bowling heat. As expected, he is bowling heat.
He sure is, of course. Bolt and Southey also providing great bowling options throughout the tournament. New Zealand beating England in the semi-final, as we've already talked about. until they got to the final and it all started to go wrong. What did you think about that final, Mark?
Yeah, like you, I was surprised that Mitchell opened. I didn't have him down as an opener. I've seen him play for Canterbury in the 2020, and he seemed more to me to be used as a finisher for his Super Smash team. So to put him to open, I think he's just a really good foil. He's just a really good cricketer, and it allowed Martin Guptill the freedom to go out and just try and hit balls, get that boundary rate up, that run rate up in the first 6 overs during the power play, which, especially for a team batting first as well in the final, was integral. The one thing I would like to touch on a little bit with regards to boundary and getting that run rate up in the first 6 overs, 25 dot balls in the first 10 overs in the final was really disappointing. That's almost 50% dot balls. I go back to intensity. Australia had it. You talk about Mitch Marsh being able to get those twos. David Warner has his critics. I will say that I am one of them, quite considerably. But his running between the wickets is unparalleled. He will turn ones into twos into threes, and I just think New Zealand lacked that a little bit. If you have 25 dot balls, if you can turn 10 of those into ones and twos, that's another at least sort of 15, 20 runs, and that could have been the difference between winning the final and not winning the final.
Absolutely. I mean, the score that New Zealand posted in the final was the highest from any T20 World Cup final. So did they think it was enough? I'm not sure. They didn't have that person come out at the end and do a cameo like Jimmy Neesham did in the final when he hit when he hit 3 sixes and a 4. It would have been great if he'd hit 6 sixes. But yeah, they just didn't have that big finish, and then they came on field with the ball. Trent Boult had a wonderful final. He did really, really well. He sort of brought it back about over 12 when they needed something. He, of course, took out the poles from David Warner, but
what a
you
sweet
just
sight.
felt it was about 5 a.m. New Zealand time, and I was jumping up and down on my bed. You just felt apart from that, New Zealand were kind of flat in the field. There wasn't sparks. Yeah, they were running for the ball. They were doing well. They just didn't have that extra bit. They were playing at 90%. You need to play at 100% in a T20 World Cup final. Also, Ish Sodhi not having his best game.
No, he didn't bowl particularly well. I think that the pressure of the occasion got to him a little bit, and just the aggressive stance of David Warner and Mitch Marsh, they just took him downtown, and he struggled to recover from that. So it happens, and again, 331 days, I think, till the next World Cup in Australia. So that's going off Jimmy Neesham's tweet and doing a little bit of maths. Less than a year, and this experience will stand them in really good stead to learn from the mistakes that they made, and generally there should be better pitchers throughout both innings. I think the biggest disappointment for me from this tournament was the fact that every team that batted second generally went to go on and win the game. It kind of became a bit scripted, and the toss became so important as opposed to individual players standing up and being able to just snatch victory from the jaws of defeat.
Absolutely. Let's talk about New Zealand, though, as a whole team, as an overall cricketing nation. They were the World Cup ODI finalists in 2015, the T20 World Cup semi-finalists in 2016, of course the ODI World Cup finalists / winners in 2019.
Keep dreaming. Keep dreaming.
One day the ICC will overrule that decision. They were, of course, the World Test Champions in 2020 and the T20 World Cup finalist in 2021. Is this the best Blackcaps team ever?
I think just judged on the performances in the last 6 years, you'd have to say they are. They are probably they definitely are the most consistent tournament team in world cricket. Correct. Over that period. No other teams made as many semi-finals and finals. The one thing you would obviously love to see from a Blackcaps perspective is that final push in the finals to be able to go on and win. An extra trophy for the cabinet to go alongside the Test Mace would be great. I do think that they have an opportunity. You look at the players who are maybe not going to be able to play in the Australian T20 World Cup next year. Maybe Martin Guptill has a ready-made replacement in Finn Allen, who I'm a massive fan of. He will come in, and I think Australian pitches again will suit him really well. You look across the rest of the team, you've maybe got a question mark over Tim Southey, but I think he's got another tournament in him. So this team that played in this tournament should go on and do good things in the tournament next year in Australia. Hopefully go one step further.
Hopefully they will meet England in the final next year, and we will not talk about the result of that now, because that could be the end of the podcast before it even began. I will add, though, of course, the Blackcaps won all of their home series last summer. Hopefully they will do the same again this summer. 4 teams touring. We will crack into that a little bit later in the podcast.
So that was the review of the T20 World Cup. And almost immediately, in fact immediately, not even almost, New Zealand have a T20 series in India. So you've got the first T20 that starts in Jaipur on the 17th of November, which is Indian date. So New Zealand, it's 3 a.m, 18th of November. The second T20 is in Ranchi, which is 19th of November, Indian time, 20th of November, 3 a.m. again, New Zealand time. And the third T20 is in Kolkata at Eden Gardens on the 21st of November, Indian time, which is the 22nd of November, again at 3 a.m, unfortunately, New Zealand time.
Yes, these 3 a.m. starts getting a little bit punishing for New Zealand fans at home. The Blackcaps will keep mostly the same squad from the T20 World Cup for this India series. Devon Conway out injured, unfortunately breaking his hand after hitting his own bat.
Which ironically, had he used, he wouldn't have been stumped, so that really made me chuckle.
It was a bit of a chuckle. Unfortunately, I would say no one is feeling madder about Devon Conway than Devon Conway is. News just in as well. Kane Williamson will sit out the T20 series. He will join the test squad that is currently in India for the test series that is coming up after this T20 series.
India's T20 squad has taken on a different direction with no Virat Kohli. He stepped down as captain after the tournament, as aforementioned. So they have Rohit Sharma as captain. I'll quickly run through because they do have some new players. They've got Rohit Sharma, KL Rahul, Ruturaj Gaikwad, who had a fantastic IPL series, Shreyas Iyer, Suryakumar Yadav, Rishabh Pant, Ishan Kishan as a wicketkeeper, as well as Rishabh Pant, Venkatesh Iyer, Yuzvendra Chahal, Ashwin, Akshar Patel, Avesh Khan, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, Deepak Chahar, Harsha Patel and Mohammad Siraj.
Yes, that series kicking off in a few days. We expect to keep the opening pair of Guptill and Daryl Mitchell. Really enjoying Mitchell at that top order. With Kane Williamson being rested, we'll probably see Seifert, Phillips, Neesham and hopefully a go for Mark Chapman. He will add another bowling option there. Ish Sodhi should get a really good go as well. He will be one of the key bowlers there. Hopefully we will see Lockie Ferguson back on the ground. He has been out injured. Hopefully he doesn't re-injure himself. He offers a lot of pace. He is a formidable force. He can bowl a Absolutely. Good ball.
I think like the most of New Zealand, just going to point out, we love Lockie Ferguson on this podcast. Love seeing him bowl.
Absolutely. Did you know, Mark, one time I followed Lockie Ferguson down a dark corridor?
Yeah, cool. Great way to make yourself sound like an absolute creep in front of everybody.
It was legit corridor.
Well played. Lockie Ferguson, if you do somehow manage to listen to this, she's not a stalker. I'm sure it was just a coincidence. But if you do feel concerned, we will put a helpline number on our Instagram page should you feel the need to call it, which will basically be 105 because that's who you should call.
It is probably good advice. Other bowling options in India will be Bolt and Southey, of course, along with our comeback king, Adam Milne. But will we see Kyle Jamieson take the field? Not needed for the T20 World Cup. Not the best T20 bowler out there, but does he deserve a chance?
I think he does. He had the stigma of obviously a really, really good New Zealand summer over here and then got picked for the IPL, and I think everybody was really keen to see how he did in the IPL. It's a learning curve for him. He's only really played on New Zealand pitches he has only played on New Zealand pitches at international level. So to go over and be expected to perform straight away in the IPL with a team such as the Royal Challengers Bangalore was a really difficult period for him, but it will be a massive learning curve for him as well. I think I do think he'll play at least a game. I do think that the likes of Trent Boult, although Trent Boult's not playing in a test series, I do think Trent Boult will probably miss out a game or two, as I imagine Tim Southey will as well. So I do think Kyle Jamieson will get a go, and it'll be interesting to see if he can implement anything that he did learn from the IPL into the T20 series. Moving on to India, really, really stoked to see some of the players in that lineup, to be honest. I'm going to start with Ruturaj Gaikwad. He had a fantastic IPL, 635 runs in 16 games. He won the Orange Cap, which is for the most runs. He's an opener, so it'll be really, really interesting to see how he goes against the likes of Lockie Ferguson, Kyle Jamieson, Trent Boult, to see if he can carry on that form in the IPL. Probably very unlucky to miss out on the T20 World Cup squad, so he will definitely have a point to prove that he does belong at that level. I also think KL Rahul had a somewhat disappointing T20 World Cup, but he is just class. He's just a player that you look at, oozes class, left, right, and centre. So again, he'll hope to find some form before the Test series. And the last player that I will touch on with India is Yuzvendra Chahal, who I think is just a bloody good leg spinner. Leg spinners are probably an ideal commodity in 2020. They generally tend to be the best bowlers. You look at the number one bowlers in 2020 cricket, you've got the likes of Adil Rashid, Adam Zampa, Rashid Khan is probably the number one 2020. Khan. They're all leggies, so can Chahal bring something to this team that they maybe necessarily lacked during the World Cup?
We will wait and see. This series obviously kicking off on the 17th of November India time, 18th of November New Zealand time. In 1 week we will come back and review, did we get it right? Did these players stand out? This series, it could be all India because it is on India turf. They love playing at home. Let's wait and see. Go the Blackcaps.
Go the Blackcaps.
Well, we're going to wrap up the podcast with my favourite segment. I'm so excited to introduce this. This is the first 11 of the week. Now, may I please give you some background on the first 11 book? This was born at the Boxing Day test where Mark and I had, I'd say, a few beers and thought, why don't we make a first 11 about a few different topics. It has exploded. I have started over 100 different first 11s. They fall into a few different categories. There's first 11s actually about cricket. There's first 11s related to people's appearances. There's first 11s related to people's names, and first 11s are related to people's overall characteristics. We're going to drop one every episode and hopefully wrap it up on a bit of a funny note. Are you ready for this week's first 11, Mark?
I'm definitely ready. I am intrigued to see which 11 you've chosen for our first episode, because out of 100 it must have been quite a difficult narrowing down category.
It may. Let's see. This is my favourite first 11 that I think I've made. This is the first 11 of things you find around your house. Opening the batting at number 1, Neil Broom.
For those who don't know who Neil Broom is,
Neil Broom is a cricketer in from Otago, plays in the Super Smash. Great cricketer, great last name. You can always find a Broom in your house.
Absolutely.
In at 2, Dane Cleaver. Number 3, one of the heroes of the World Cup, Glenn Phillips.
Screwdriver.
And number 4 is Joss Butler, also our wicketkeeper for the first 11. Number 5, we have Jordan Silk. 6, Anaru Kitchen. 7,
just seeing your face while you're talking through these is making me genuinely happy.
I just love this book. So 7, we've got Jack Ball. Number 8, Joe Walker. Number 9, Jono Cook. 10 is Ian Bell, and at 11 we have Trent Boult.
That, ladies and gentlemen, is the first ever first 11 of things that you will find around the house.
Love it. I absolutely love it. And that is the end of this episode of the podcast. Our first episode. If you'd like to get in touch, we are on Instagram at Back of a Length or on Twitter at Back of Length with a little underscore at the end of that handle.
Yep, thanks for joining us. If there's anything that you feel as though we've missed, we do apologise. We have a finite period of time to record a podcast and try and make sure that nobody falls asleep unless you're listening to this podcast specifically to fall asleep. And if you are, thanks for joining us. But for now, yeah.
Thank you so much.
That's the end of the podcast. We're off to cheers a socially distanced beer in the background. So we hope to have you tuning in next week.